Today on LA Currents. With a city as diverse as Los Angeles, reducing bias and protecting rights falls to the LA Civil Rights. We visit with Capri Maddox, who heads the department determined to fight discrimination. Making sure the numbers add up and the money spent appropriately. Sergio Perez, the LA Controller's Chief of Accountability and Oversight, takes us through the steps to transparency. But to start, a new face on the LA City Council. Eunisses Hernandez brings to her job the awareness of the community she loves and wants the community to not only feel comfortable with government, but truly participate. Well, the midterm elections introduced us to a lot of new faces with the LA City Council, and I'm delighted today to be joined by the representative of District 1, Eunisses Hernandez. So lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me,
and congratulations
Maria.
on the
Thank you.
I know it's been a couple months, but what was it that made you want to become a council member and represent the district that you live?
I was born and raised in this district and have lived there for over 30 years. And I saw, it's the same members in my community, the same people in my neighborhood, friends and family who kept being left behind and experiencing crisis over and over again, whether it's loss of jobs, being impacted by the foster care system, having mental health or problematic substance use and not getting met with support. Those are the things that drove me to run, because I saw that the influence, especially the local influence that a council member has on their constituents. And I felt that, living there my whole life, I've seen how we've been left behind in many cases.
In terms of who you are as a person, the idea of what is a democratic socialist? I mean, how do you define that?
So I see myself, and I see that role and that identity as a democratic socialist, as a person who opens up government to ordinary people, both in over communicating and sharing information, but also by bringing people in. For many parts of our district, folks don't know how to engage their council offices. They don't even know what their council offices are responsible for or what they can help with. So that's why I do weekly recap videos of letting people know what we've done that week, both in council and in our committees. We started a series called City Hall 101, where we take on different items and educate people on, look, this is where you can find city council files. We're teaching folks how to use 311. We're teaching folks how to use different city tools so that they can, have better information, but also know when to move their car if they're street cleaning. And it's also in our policy development. We put a motion forward to develop an Office of Victim and Survivor Services, because in our first few weeks, we found out that there was a lot lacking in supporting families who have been harmed by violence.
Okay, so that makes me actually wonder about the services. So, helping families that have been affected by violence. Violence from what, where? Does it matter, or just violence at large? Violence from other family members, violence from community, violence from, the system? What does that mean?
I think it's the spectrum of all of those things, because we've had to help families who have lost people to state-sanctioned violence. We've had to help people who have been run over by cars while riding their bikes, and they've been left in a state where they cannot care for themselves. It's just being able to support people who have experienced harm or have lost people to different types of violence. I'm a survivor of violence, of sexual assault, and I'm not a person who had the opportunity to go file a case and get services that way. Many families that I know also have not gone to put a case against someone because they're afraid to engage the system, whether it's immigration status, whether it's different things. Then they don't get to access the victim services that currently exist. And so it's a practice that we're building, but it is something that we want folks to know this is a one-stop shop. Because you're right, for housing you have to call HACLA, HUD. If you need transportation, if you need food, it's just so many places you have to reach out to. And when people have lost someone to violence, or if they've experienced violence themselves, it's hard just to live with the trauma, let alone have to navigate a whole system to get support and care.
At one point in your life, you wanted to be a police officer. Something shifted. What shifted and why?
Yes, so I grew up, I've lived in this neighborhood my whole life. I've seen a lot of my loved ones and friends impacted by criminalization when they needed access to care. One of my good friends was evicted from his home during our senior year when we had to take an AP history test that same day, I remember. He didn't recover from that trauma, and he's still bouncing from place to place because he was never able to fully recover housing, because he developed problematic substance use from experiencing not having a home. One of my other friends was impacted by the foster care system. Started selling marijuana, got arrested, ended up in the county jail for several weeks in early 2000s. That conviction ruined his life. We've legalized it now, but back then that's a felony that would land you in jail, depending on what it was. And so I had a lot of veteran friends as well who came back with serious mental health needs from, going to Afghanistan and Iraq. I also at some point had to call 911 for intimate partner violence when we were renting rooms in my home during the recession. And I remember the LAPD didn't even get out of their cars in that moment. And they left us with the violent person in our home. And for me, I said, okay, I have to be the cop that helps people when they do need help. But when I went to school, I got my bachelor's in criminal justice. The program I graduated from at Cal State Long Beach tailors you to become law enforcement. But I also took some classes around the war on drugs. I also took a class around the criminological theory, which teaches you a lot of the reasons why people commit crime. And that also connected a lot of dots for me. A lot of it is around poverty, lack of access, lack of opportunity. So at the end of my degree, I was like, I'm not gonna be able to change this system by myself. And it took me about a year to find a job in policy. The universe landed me in this space, and my first job was with the Drug Policy Alliance as a criminal justice intern. But it was those classes, that transformation, those professors that really shifted my view on where the actual power lies, where influence lies, where you can actually make changes. Like as a police officer, you're implementing laws. But as a legislator, you're writing the laws. And I think that's why it's so important that I'm in this seat. Because in no other moment in history have we funded the current system of crisis response like we do today. Mm-hmm. We don't have a true system that prevents harm and violence. Only a system that really responds after the harm and violence has been committed already. And so the work that I have done at the state and at the county level has been to build out responses, services, and prevention to keep the harm from occurring in the first place.
Obviously, you are passionate, and that's apparent with a capital A, but what have you learned now that you're in this position versus, taking one particular issue? Now you're getting everybody's issues. So what's been a surprise?
What has been a surprise?
So
many things have been a surprise, yeah. It's patience, I feel. As being a person who has advocated on the outside, as a community organizer, coalition builder, we always have to remind ourselves, this is a marathon. It's gonna take a long time. And it's easier to understand and grapple with when you're on the outside because you really have not much, you can influence and move, but not as much as you would like, right? Because you're trying to persuade somebody. But being on the inside, it's I'm already persuaded. So how do we start doing? How do we move this bureaucracy to catch up with the needs and demands of our communities today? And for me, that's just something that I'm, again, reminding myself, this is a marathon. You have to have patience because there's a lot of barriers to moving things, but that does not deter us.
Are you also hearing from people who say, I just want, a nice spot for my dog to go out in the grass? Or are you also hearing small things like, can I please have a street light so that, I can cross the street, so I can get to the store or something like that? Are you getting a lot of that from your constituency as well?
Yes. Our community and our district and our constituents have been starved of city services, particularly the south side of our district and the hillside parts of our district, such as Mount Washington. And so we're getting a lot of calls and outreach around. We need cement roads. We have a vehicle stuck. The fire trucks can't get up. We have potholes. And so that's where our 311 has come and our education has come into play, because
now they know what to
do. And it gives us an opportunity to track calls that are coming in, so that as a council office, we can call and follow up with the departments. But it's also educating our folks, right, I understand that you need a street light out, yet our Bureau of Streetlight Department has a very large vacancy rate, like many of our other city departments. So it might be a small thing that you need, but it's tied to this bigger situation that we're also trying to address, trying to get more people hired on quickly so that we can, create speed bumps, more bike lanes. So it's challenging, but it's deeper, longer conversations with folks about some of these issues that aren't just black and white or seem that they should be pretty simple, which they should, but it'll take some time before we can make it that way.
All right, now if anyone wants to find out what's going on with CD1 or find out what's happening with you, what's the best way for them to find out?
The two best ways that folks can find out what's happening in CD1 are to go to our Twitter or Instagram, which is CD1 Los Angeles, and they can go to our website at cd1.lacity.gov.
Perfect. All right. Well, I look forward to talking to you again very, very soon.
I can't wait. Thank you for having me.
Working toward an inclusive and just Los Angeles, Capri Maddox of LA Civil Rights feels at once optimistic and challenged in the fight against hate. Well, it is always delightful to invite Executive Director Capri Maddox of the Civil and Human Rights and Equity Department into our studio. But today we're actually visiting her office. We are in the John Lewis Conference Center, and it is so nice to be here. What a great space. You guys moved in recently, did you not?
Yes.
About a year, maybe?
Yes, September of 2021, and we wanted to create a space that not only supported our wonderful, hardworking staff, but we wanted to have a space that was welcoming for the community and really worked for our 41 commissioners that serve on our 5 commissions here at the LA Civil Rights Department.
All right, well then let's dig into this a little bit, because it's really only been 18 months. I mean, and you know, obviously so much has happened. As part of LA Civil Rights, you have the Discrimination Enforcement Unit, which was something that we had talked about a few months ago, you know, getting put into place, but now, you know, it's getting up and rolling. And what are you hearing, and what are some of the cases that are coming in, and what are some of the outcomes you're hoping for?
Well, first of all, we want to send a clear message that although we enjoy the carrot and stick approach, this is the stick approach to the carrot and stick model. And I think making sure that people can be held accountable is something that residents have wanted, and justice delayed has been justice denied. But I think it is important to know that we have a number of cases that are coming through. And I'll tell you, to answer the pertinent question here is, we have a number of inquiries that have come in. Over the last about 2 years, we've had 300 cases, Maria, come in as far as inquiries. A lot of those have been referred out to our state and federal partners, but what we are seeing in the cases that I believe we'll be able to take is discrimination in education at some of our local private schools, local private high schools, where underrepresented populations have felt othered. In addition, again, thinking about the rental market, where the discrimination is taking place, particularly as it relates to citizenship or even primary language. And so we want to be intentional to protect folks in a number of ways. And the outcomes that we are looking for is to make sure that people are made whole. And I want to be intentional to say that we have resources to bring cases against folks that violate your civil rights, and the penalties can be up to $250,000. And that doesn't preclude residents from seeking justice through a private attorney or another government entity.
It's tragic, fascinating, and then with these efforts, hopeful. You would think that we would be past so much, because there are laws on the book that protect people when they're inquiring for a rental property or things like that. And it's a little disconcerting to think that those laws have been there, but maybe they have not been enforced. I mean, an organization like this, I would imagine, because it's so personal, so one-on-one, so accessible, is that giving people the confidence then to reach out and make these inquiries to find out whether they have some sort of claim against somebody? Do you think that is helping solve this problem, bridging from law into action?
Yes. Maria, people in Los Angeles see us. We are available, and Tom Bradley said availability is the best ability, and we are making ourselves available to the residents of the city of Los Angeles. Some people, believe it or not, they think that's just the way it is. They think they've been othered so much that they are used to that behavior, and they're thinking, what am I going to do with this, against a big landlord? Or what am I going to do with this employer? Or this is a prestigious private school that I was lucky to get in. I better not complain, even if I am being wronged here. And people need to know their rights. And I think that is why the education component of our operation is important. We have a number of commissioners that are on our Civil Rights Commission that are out in the community providing education for our residents to let them know their rights so they will come forward with a case.
There are some things that just seem to rear their ugly heads over and over and over again. And one is that, the subject of hate against others. Every time we think we've sort of been okay, then there's another wave of anger and loudness and hate. So how is that affecting what you are doing here? I mean, from the Asian American communities to now the Jewish American communities, it doesn't seem to stop.
Yeah, there are times, Maria, where I feel like I'm playing hate whack-a-mole, where we make sure we address something that has happened to one community and then something else pops up. And quite frankly, even in City Hall, we had some challenges that we are working through, and we are not going to create a Los Angeles where we're going to use tapes or how people have been othered as an excuse to not do what's right for all communities, because representation matters. So it is overwhelming in some regards, but I feel like our staff is empowered because we get a chance to do something about it. There's folks that are sitting at home and they just see it and they're frustrated by it, but we are creating a team of people that are able to fight it and use a variety of skills. And I'm so delighted that we serve as the City of Angels. And it's one thing that throughout my entire career I've taken to heart, that angels are messengers, right? And we know what happens in Los Angeles has an impact on what happens in the world. And so I am mindful of that every day we come to work here at the LA Civil Rights Department, because we want to be a solution. We want to be a model. We want to be leaders on what is working and how we can shape a better tomorrow, not only for Los Angeles, but for our entire world. And I don't have to tell you, it only takes being home watching the news for 5 minutes to realize that we need all the help we can get.
Right. Well, this is just one tiny piece of what LA Civil Rights is doing. I mean, we also had the good opportunity to speak about LA Repair and how infusing some opportunities into communities for them to choose where the needs are and to help build with communities. How is LA Repair doing? And what is it, just as a tiny refresher?
So the LA Repair program gives real people real power over real money to determine where resources should go to serve their community. And we couldn't be more grateful to the mayor and city council for granting us $8.5 million to move forward and provide resources for the community. Community members have the ability to participate. It's called participatory budgeting for a reason. They are able to participate in an idea collection phase and to weigh in on how these dollars are spent. Ideas that are coming forward now are childcare, rental assistance, citizenship assistance. And I just think it's beautiful that the community, working with our community-based organizations, is going to provide services and resources in partnership with the city family. It's a win-win-win, and we're a better Los Angeles because of the repair program.
Wow, obviously the most important thing, if people want to learn, you've already mentioned it once before, but let's repeat where people can get information about what's happening here.
Well, I want people to definitely follow us at LA Civil Rights. That's our social media pages. And I think it's important to be intentional to sign up for our newsletter. And you can do this at civilandhumanrights.lacity.org. And I also want to tell people, if you need help, if you feel like hate and discrimination is reared its ugly head in your life in some way, call us. There is no wrong door when it comes to fighting hate and discrimination when it comes to our office. And our phone number is 213-978-1845.
Thanks for letting us come into your world for the day.
Thank you so much for joining us.
backing up the stories with actual facts and figures. Chief of Accountability and Oversight, Sergio Perez, talked with Anita Bennett about the clarity of data.
Los Angeles has a new Chief of Accountability and Oversight in the City Controller's Office. And joining us now to discuss his role as Accountability Chief is Sergio Perez. Thank you so much for being here, Sergio.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so what are your responsibilities in this new role?
It's not only a new role for me, but it's a new role for the city. My focus is on ensuring that the work that the Controller's Office does in its audits and reviews are in line with the interests of the Controller, Kenneth Mejia, and the people of Los Angeles. So I'm bringing my experience, both as an attorney and in the work that I've done in the past, to focus in our resources and time on the issues that matter.
What are the most pressing issues in terms of auditing?
Right now, we're really focusing in on public safety and homelessness. These were two issues that not only dominated the campaign for the Controller's Office, but which are top of mind for the people of Los Angeles. It's no secret to anybody that lives in this city that there is a homelessness crisis that exists on our streets, in our shelters, and in other corners of the city. And so we're focusing on ensuring that we understand the investments the city is making on this and help the people of Los Angeles understand exactly what those investments are buying us. It's the same in public safety. We've launched a public audit on the use of helicopters by the LAPD, where we're hoping to help people understand exactly how much money, time, resources go into our helicopter fleet and what those investments are getting us.
And if you find that too much is being spent on helicopters for the police department, what happens after that?
Well, the focus of the Controller's Office is to assess performance and to bring transparency into these spaces. We're likely to issue a public report and other kinds of end products like data maps and things like that to help people understand the use of helicopters. Along with those, we'll issue recommendations in case there are areas for improvement that we identify.
And let's shift to the homelessness issue, because everyone I talk to in the city, that is the most pressing issue. When you do the audit, are you going to look at money? You said, the money that's spent, is it money on housing? What is this? What are we talking about?
We're looking at taking a look at that issue from every angle. We have publicly announced an audit of the interim housing investments and choices that have been made. Interim housing is traditionally referred to as shelter beds that can provide shelter for individuals that are unhoused. And our goal is to help people understand where that money is going, how much really does exist in the way of interim housing, so that it can help drive decision makers and help the people of Los Angeles make choices on their own. But we're not going to stop there. We're also going to take a look at the whole ecosystem. And so we are working on understanding permanent housing because that is the ultimate end goal for folks who are unhoused, giving them the kind of supportive housing that they need to live full and safe lives.
What's your ultimate goal while you're in this position, like long-term and short-term?
Our ultimate goal as a team, and this is something that Controller Mejia emphasizes every day, is on improving the lives of Los Angeles residents. And that does mean bringing more transparency and boosting more accountability. It also means just helping decision makers understand the issues so that their decisions, whether they're legislative or otherwise, are predicated on facts, not assumptions. What we've learned is that there's a lot missing in the terms of data, whether it's homelessness or public safety. And so we're also working to fill in those data vacuums so that it's reliable, independent, trustworthy information that's guiding our decision making.
What are some of the other areas that you'll be conducting reviews on?
We have a live review of the Los Angeles Animal Services Agency, because that is also an issue that Controller Mejia ran plan on and that folks are very interested in. We are assessing that agency from top to bottom, not only taking a look at the treatment of animals within the care of the Los Angeles Animal Services Agency, but also taking a look at the way that its human resources are being managed from volunteers and civil servants on up.
Mm-hmm. And when you say that, you're going to look at the money that's spent on the animals, could there be perhaps a recommendation that this department needs more funding?
That's exactly right. Often what we find is that agencies aren't failing for lack of trying, or that our city processes may be underinvested in. And that's one thing that that Controller Mejia and the team are really focused on, which is ensuring people understand not only these particular agencies, but the city budget as a whole, so that decisions can be made about whether those funds can be better allocated and better spent.
I know you haven't been in the office a long time, but from what you've heard, do departments ever come to the controller's office and say, hey, audit us, or is that unheard of?
No, there are, I think, the executive leaders of the city who understand that audit isn't a dirty word, and that it's very, very helpful to have a resource like the controller's office in-house who can come in, provide an independent assessment, and provide best practices-based advice and recommendations. They see the value in that. That hasn't happened in the work that I do over the last 3 months, but I know that it has happened in the past.
In the past, okay. The controller's job can be very difficult, in times of financial crisis or whatever. Are you prepared for that?
I am, and what's really, really helpful is the whole team is prepared for that. As I mentioned, we've got a deep bench here of subject matter experts. I'll give you an example. I mentioned Public Safety Director Dinah Manning. She came to us from the Federal Public Defenders. So she's got such a keen understanding of our public safety ecosystem. Ashley Bennett, our Director of Homelessness, she used to work for LASA, which is this massive multi-jurisdictional agency that's focused on homelessness. And as a child and youth, she herself was unhoused in housing insecure. And so when you've got a deep bench like that, when you confront something that you don't know quite how to handle, which happens fairly frequently, you can rely on the rest of the team to really come together and find the best approach. And that's what's happening on a day-to-day basis.
That is good to hear. When you conduct an audit of a city department, what does that entail? How long does it take?
Oh, it can take a long time. The great thing about the Controller's Office is it has an audit division staffed with audit professionals, accountants, investigators. It entails initially understanding the questions you're seeking to answer, right? An audit is really about establishing independently, concretely, and objectively whether systems are working the way they should. So you have to first isolate the target of the audit. What system do you care about? And isolate the questions that you ask. It's a real pleasure working with somebody like Controller Mejia because he's a certified public accountant himself. And that means he brings a fine understanding of how this work should be done and how we can do it efficiently. He's very hands-on, and he's involved in most of the audits that we're carrying out now in a serious and constructive way. An audit, depending on the system that it's taking a look at and the questions that it's seeking to answer, can last anywhere from 6 months to 2-3 years. But we're looking to move very quickly on these.
Does it depend on the size of the department?
It depends on the size of the department and on how cooperative those individuals are. It also depends on our resources. The Controller's Office, as I've mentioned, is in charge of a citywide function. And the audit division that I referenced is not very big. There are about 6 to 7 dedicated auditors in that division, and the fraud, waste, and abuse unit that we were, discussing earlier is about 4 people strong. So when you think about how big city government is, how much money is moving through it, how much work is getting done on an everyday basis, you've got to be really intentional about the audits that you launch.
Well, this has certainly been a fascinating conversation. I learned a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Sergio Perez, you are in the Controller's Office. You are the Chief of Accountability and Oversight. That is going to do it for this edition of LA Currents. I'm Anita Bennett. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.